Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This one's specifically for you Windows 365 veterans out there.
Yep, we know you like to stay right on top of things.
So we're jumping straight into the latest updates, the new features, the changes Microsoft's been rolling out.
Exactly. Today, it's all about the enhancements for management, security, monitoring. We'll try and keep it focused, give you the essentials.
Perfect. First up, the Connected Frontline Cloud PCs Report. It's out of preview, now generally available.
Right, big step.
So what does this actually mean for managing those frontline deployments?
Well, this report is really key for getting visibility into how your frontline cloud PC licenses are being used concurrently, at the same time.
Okay.
It gives you that real-time picture, but also historical data on how many users are connected simultaneously. Helps you see if you're getting the most out of your licenses.
So it's more than just like a list of who's logged in. What are the practical takeaways?
Oh yeah, much more. You can see who's connected right now, how long their session has been active, and importantly for dedicated frontline PCs, it'll flag users who are in that concurrency buffer.
The buffer, that temporary overage allowance.
Exactly. Seeing that helps you figure out if you've actually got the right number of licenses for your peak times.
Yeah.
And you can even, take action right from the report, like restarting a cloud PC to free up a slot if needed.
Okay, interesting. And the maximum concurrency limit, that's just the number of licenses we actually purchased, right?
That's it.
What happens, or what should we think about if we see we're hitting that limit often?
Right. Well, if you're consistently hitting it, that means new users trying to connect might get blocked. The report actually highlights when that happens.
Okay.
So your options are basically restart some potentially inactive PCs, maybe revisit how you've assigned licenses in your Microsoft Entra groups, or, well, look into buying more licenses if the demand is really there.
And just to be clear, if you're in dedicated mode and go over the limit shown in the report, that's the buffer being used.
Precisely. That's the buffer kicking in.
Makes sense. What about permissions? Who gets to see all this concurrency data?
Good question. You need specific permissions, shared use license usage report, and shared use service plans.
Okay.
You assign those in the Intune admin center, go to tenant administration, then roles, create a new Windows 365 role, or modify an existing one with those permissions. Keeps it secure.
Got it. And finding the report itself, where is it tucked away in Intune?
You'll find it under Reports, then Cloud PC Overview. Look for Connected Frontline Cloud PCs Preview. Now, it might still say Preview in the name, even though it's GA.
Okay, a little lag in the naming, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah. Just click that and then pick the cloud PC size you're interested in. And remember, this is only for frontline licenses. If you don't have any, the report will just be empty.
Right, specific to frontline. Once we're in, what about looking back? What kind of history does it give us?
It holds data for the last 28 days. You get the current connections number, obviously. But the really useful part is the concurrent connection history graph. That graph helps you spot trends, patterns over the last month. Super helpful for planning your license needs going forward.
Yeah, that historical view sounds crucial for forecasting. Any more immediate, peak usage stats?
Yep. It also shows the most concurrent connections. You can see the daily peak for the last 7 or 28 days, and even hourly peaks for the last 1, 3, or 7 days.
Okay, pretty granular.
And it clearly shows your limit. That's your purchase license count, and flags any times you've actually reached concurrency limit.
And again, those spikes above the limit line on the graph, that's just the buffer for dedicated frontline.
That's exactly right, just buffer usage. Below all the graphs, there's also a connected devices section. It lists the currently connected cloud PCs who's logged in, session duration.
And that's where you can do the restarts you mentioned earlier.
Correct, right from that list.
Yeah.
Makes it easy to manage active connections on the fly.
Okay, good overview of the reporting. Let's switch gears. Resizing Windows 365 Frontline Cloud PCs, that sounds like a much requested feature.
It definitely is. But a couple of key things here. This is currently in public preview.
Right, preview.
And very importantly, it's only for Frontline Cloud PCs running in dedicated mode. You can't resize shared mode frontline PCs with this right now.
Dedicated mode only. Got it. That's a critical distinction. What about the admin side? What roles do you need to actually do a resize?
It kind of depends on how the licenses were assigned. If they're direct assigned, you need something like Intune Service Administrator or Intune Reader plus Cloud PC Admin or Intune Reader plus Windows 365 Admin.
Okay.
If you're using group-based licensing, you need one of those plus another role that can handle Microsoft Entra Group memberships and licensing like the Windows 365 Admin role again. or a custom role with similar permissions.
Right. Covers both the device and the user group aspect. Any technical gotchas we need to watch out for before trying this?
Yes, definitely one big one if you're using Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join and Bring Your Own Network.
Okay.
For those specific cloud PCs, when you resize them, the system needs a second IP address available in that same subnet temporarily.
A second IP. Why is that?
It's for rollback capability. If something goes wrong during the resize, it uses that second IP to potentially revert back to the original configuration smoothly.
Ah, okay. So we need to check our IP pools.
Exactly. Make sure you have enough free IPs in the subnet, otherwise the resize could fail. You might need to stagger the resizes if your pool is tight.
Good tip. Anything else needed?
Just the obvious ones, really.
Yeah.
You need enough available licenses for the new size you're moving to. And the cloud PC itself has to be in a provisioned state. You can't resize one that's still provisioning or has an issue.
Right. Okay, prerequisites checked. How do we actually kick off a resize?
It's done through the provisioning policies. So in the Intune Admin Center, navigate to Devices Windows 365 provisioning policies. Find the policy that applies to the dedicated frontline PCs you want to resize. Select it, then choose to edit the assignments.
Assignments, right.
In the list of assignments, you'll see the Cloud PC Size column. Find the frontline entry you want to change, click on it, and it'll show you the available sizes you can switch to. Pick the new one.
Select new size, then
Just click Next through the assignments page, unless you're changing assignments too, and then hit Update on the Final Review plus Save tab. That starts the process.
Seems pretty straightforward through the policy. How do we keep an eye on how it's going?
You can monitor the progress on the main All Cloud PCs page. The status will update there. There's also a Cloud PC Actions report that logs these kinds of activities, so you can check the details there too.
Okay, good to know where to look. Let's pivot now to security. Token protection, that's in public preview too, right? For the Windows app on Windows devices.
Correct, public preview. And this is a really interesting security enhancement.
What's the core idea behind it? How does it boost security?
Basically, it makes stolen sign-in tokens much harder for attackers to actually use.
Yeah.
It cryptographically ties the token, specifically the refresh token, the PRT, to the device it was issued from.
Ties it to the device.
Yeah, using a kind of cryptographic secret bound to the hardware or OS state.
Yeah.
So even if an attacker manages to steal the token, they can't replay it successfully from a different device because they don't have that device-specific secret key.
Right.
It combats token theft attacks directly.
That sounds pretty powerful. Which apps does this cover in the preview?
Well, the initial conditional access policy for token protection covered desktop apps accessing Exchange Online and SharePoint Online on Windows.
Right.
But the big news for this audience is that support has now been extended to the Windows app itself.
Ah, so it protects Windows 365 and AVD sessions launched via the Windows app.
Exactly. That's a significant step in hardening access to those remote resources.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned conditional access policies. Anything changed recently in how this is reported? I feel like I read something.
You probably did. Yes, back in late June 2023, the way token protection showed up in the sign-in logs changed slightly. What used to be reported as binding under enforced session controls or session controls not satisfied is now called Signin token protection.
Okay, so if you have custom queries or alerts based on the old value.
You need to update them to look for Signin token protection instead. Good catch. Also, related to this, some ways of joining devices to Microsoft Entra are actually no longer supported with feature enabled.
Oh. Which join methods are incompatible?
Let me see. Microsoft Entra joined Azure Virtual Desktop Session hosts themselves, devices that were bulk enroll cloud PCs deployed by Windows 365 that are purely Microsoft Entra joined.
Okay, that's important for cloud PC users.
Yep. Also, Power Automate hosted machine groups that are Entra joined, self-deploying autopilot mode, and Azure VMs using the Microsoft Entra Auth VM extension. Those setups currently aren't compatible with token protection enforcement.
Wow, quite a list. Need to be aware of those. Any other related changes?
It's just a small one. The error code you might see in logs if a conditional access policy blocks access due to token protection failure has changed from 53003 to 5300084.
Good to know for troubleshooting. So to use token protection at all, what's the license requirement?
You need Microsoft Entra ID P2 licenses.
P2, okay. And which specific devices and apps are supported?
On the device side, it's Windows 10 or newer. That includes Microsoft's Entra joined, hybrid joined, or even registered devices. Also Windows Server 2019 and newer, if they're hybrid joined.
And applications.
Current versions of the OneDrive Sync client, the native Teams client, Power BI desktop, the Exchange PowerShell module, Microsoft Graph PowerShell if you use the Enable Login by WAM switch, Visual Studio 2022 and later, and of course the Windows app itself, version 2.0.379.0 or newer.
Okay, that covers a lot of common scenarios.
Yeah.
Are there known gaps or things that don't work?
Yes. A few limitations to be aware of.
Yeah.
Office perpetual clients like Office 2019 aren't supported. Also, PowerShell modules that connect directly to SharePoint, Power Query within Excel, accessing certain sources, some VS Code extensions that hit Exchange or SharePoint, those might have issues. And devices like Surface Hubs and Windows-based Microsoft Teams Rooms systems are out for now.
Got it. If we suspect some devices might be hitting issues because they used one of those unsupported registration methods you listed earlier, how can we confirm that in the logs?
You'd look in the sign-in logs again, check the Token Protection Status Details attribute. If you see a sign-in session status code of 1003, that usually means it was blocked because the device registration type isn't supported by token protection.
1003. Okay, that's the code to look for. Can we be proactive about this? Like, exclude those known unsupported device types from the policy?
Absolutely, and that's recommended. You can use device filters in your conditional access policy.
Filters? How would that work?
So, for example, to exclude Microsoft Entra joined Cloud PCs, you could add a filter rule like System Labels EQ Cloud PC and Trust Type EQ Azure AID. There are similar attributes you can filter on for Azure Virtual Desktops, those Power Automate machines, and Entra joined Azure VMs.
Okay, that gives us fine-grained control. What's the best way to actually roll this out without causing chaos?
Definitely phased rollout. That's the key. Start with a small pilot group of users.
Right.
Configure the conditional access policy, but set it to report-only mode first. Don't enforce it yet.
Report only. Okay.
Then you carefully monitor the sign-in logs, both interactive and non-interactive logins. See who or what would have been blocked. Analyze the application and device compatibility in your environment based on those logs. Once you're comfortable that the key scenarios work, you can gradually switch the policy to on or enforce it for broader groups.
Makes sense. Walk us through creating that conditional access policy, the key settings.
Sure. Create a new policy. Assign it to your pilot users or groups. For the target resources or cloud apps, be specific. Select Office 365 Exchange Online, Office 365 SharePoint Online, and optionally add Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, and Windows Cloud Login if relevant.
Specifically those apps, not the big Office 365 suite app.
Exactly. Don't just pick the generic Office 365 group. Be specific. Then, under Conditions, set device platforms to include only Windows. Under Client Apps, configure it to apply to mobile apps and desktop clients.
Okay.
And the crucial part, under Session Controls, select Require Token Protection for sign-in sessions. Like we said, start with the policy enablement set to report only.
Got it. Any other policies that work well alongside this one?
Yeah, it's generally good practice to also have policies that block access from completely unknown or unsupported device platforms. And also, requiring device compliance for known platforms adds another layer. Token protection works well as part of that broader zero-trust strategy.
Makes sense. How do we monitor this effectively once it's running, maybe even in report-only mode?
The sign-in logs are your primary source. You'll see that token protection sign-in session field. It should say bound if it worked. If it says unbound, it usually gives a reason code why.
Okay.
For deeper analysis, log analytics is great. You can ingest the sign-in logs there and use Custo query language, KQL. There's some good example queries out there to help you slice and dice the data, see which apps or users are being blocked or would be blocked, identify devices failing the requirements, that kind of thing.
And for the end user, what do they actually see?
Ideally, nothing. If they're on a supported device using a supported app, it should just be seamless. The protection happens behind the scenes. If they do try to access something from an unsupported setup when the policy is enforced, they'll likely get an error message after they authenticate, saying they can't access the resource due to policy.
Okay. Let's quickly cover some general security enhancements that landed too.
Right. Good point. So for newly provisioned cloud PCs, or ones you reprovision, if they're running Windows 11, they now get several key security features enabled by default.
Which ones?
Virtualization Based Security, or VBS. That includes Hypervisor Code Integrity, HVCI, sometimes called memory integrity, and also Microsoft Defender Credential Guard.
Those are enabled out of the box now on new Win 11 cloud PCs.
Yep. Big boost to the default security posture.
Can you just briefly remind us why those are important? For the seasoned folks who know the names but maybe need a quick refresher.
Sure. VBS basically uses the hardware virtualization capabilities to create a secure, isolated region of memory. HVCI uses VBS to protect critical kernel processes, making it much harder for malware to inject malicious code. And Credential Guard, also using VBS, isolates and protects credentials like NTLM hashes and Kerberos tickets, making pass the half and similar attacks much more difficult.
So better protection against malware and credential theft by default.
Exactly. Alongside things like the virtual TPM and secure boot, which were already there, it builds a really strong foundation.
Excellent. Anything else on the security front? Maybe for investigations?
Yes, the place a Cloud PC under review feature, which is used for digital forensics.
Right, to get a snapshot.
That feature now has an important update related to compliance. Admins can now configure the Azure Blob storage location where those review snapshots are saved to use immutability, specifically WORM storage. Write once, read many.
Ah, so the forensic snapshot can't be tampered with.
Precisely. This helps organizations meet regulatory requirements like SEC Rule 17a-4, which demands certain records be kept in a non-rewritable, non-erasable format. So you can configure that immutability on the storage account now.
That's a really important update for regulated industries using that feature.
Definitely. You can find the details linked from the Place a Cloud PC under review documentation, pointing towards the Azure WORM storage compliance reports.
Okay, well, these are definitely some substantial updates across the board: reporting, management flexibility, and quite a bit on security.
Absolutely. Lots for Windows 365 admins and enthusiasts to dig into here. These enhancements really do improve how you can manage, secure, and monitor those Cloud PC environments.
So, for all of you listening who are deep in the Windows 365 world, we really encourage you to explore these features in your own tenants. See how the new report works, maybe test out resizing and preview, plan that token protection rollout.
Yeah, get hands-on. It shows Microsoft's continued investment in the platform.
Definitely. So, maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. As you start using these new reports, these resizing options, these security layers, how might they reshape your day-to-day operations and your overall strategy for managing and securing your cloud PC fleet? Something to think about.
Good question.
Thanks for tuning into this deep dive.